Hello, beautiful people. Good morning. Mic check, mic check. We have returned from Mars. We are no longer in the Breaking Bad desert. The orange hue is gone. Amen. Amen. That was annoying, but the problem has been fixed. Technology. I hope you're doing well today. It's good to see you all. Hit the like button, share the live. Shout out to all the looters near and far, and the silent looters too, who don't chat, but you're watching. If you are chatting or follow along with the chat, make sure you change your settings from top chat to live chat so you don't miss anything. Shout out to all the members and the subscribers. Join us. Join us. I might, but the chat is great. So, you can't go wrong. Oh boy. Well, yesterday was eventful. The dockets have been really quiet overnight, which I'm like, is something wrong with the website or the dockets really this quiet? Kind of rare. Kind of rare, and I'm very suspicious. It doesn't put me at ease. We had a live yesterday morning. We tried to have a live about this topic yesterday late afternoon, but then I had to leave on short notice. And then we had a live last night talking about Congresswoman Ilhan Omar being attacked at her first town hall of the year. And I said we would come back to this today and just run it back to the beginning and start it over. So that's what we're gonna do. In terms of what's been going on in the national news this morning, Donald seems to really want to get his gun off this morning at another country. And since for now, it's not going to be Greenland, he's really pressuring Iran. We've got and are increasing a very large presence in the area. So that's disconcerting. And then also, ICE tried to storm the Ecuadorian embassy. Storm is a strong word. There was one person, at least one ICE officer, trying to get into the Ecuadorian embassy in the United States of America. Yeah, that is a massive no-no. No-no. No, 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 no. Law enforcement does not go into other countries' embassies. Period. So, for me, it just reinforces that these agents of the government are unhinged. They don't care about the law at any level. So, yeah. Beyond that, Donald is saying that Congresswoman Omar attacked herself. I know I did. I got off of here. I ate some dinner, and then me and my cat went and did cat lady things. Got in the bed, turned on whatever, and laid there and just waited for the night to claim us, basically. I was really just like, Just whenever I fall asleep is fine. I don't really care, and I woke up a couple times, which I could tell that I wasn't gonna have the best sleep, going in. Um, but it's whatever. Thank you. Consulate. Yes, consulate. That's right. Good morning, beautiful. They just, yeah. Yep, she did it to herself. She set the whole thing up. She set the whole thing up. Uh, who is it? Yeah, she probably had herself sprayed, is what he said. He's not happy with the Minneapolis mayor for some stupid reason. The man who was arrested, I can't remember his name, James Kazmierzek, has a felony from the 80s. It's got a couple driving incidents. He's an avid Trump supporter. Um, who's surprised? But yep, she did it to herself. I said, this dude really doesn't like, this is kind of typical of him, is Donald doesn't like to be told what to do. He doesn't like to be pressured to do things that are, that go against what it was he intends to do. And he usually has some type of outbursts when he has been put in the position to have to do that. And, when he's otherwise experiencing significant stress. um, and between Greenland and absolutely getting pummeled in the media uh, on Minneapolis and being pummeled by both sides of the aisle in front of the cameras and behind closed doors. He's grouchy. So he's threatening to bomb Iran. Excuse me. He's threatening to bomb Iran. And, he's lashing out at local officials. We just got started. We're just talking. So that was my reaction. Oh, he's upset. Donald's not happy this morning. There's not a whole lot that he can do about it. He really believes that he should just say something and it's a decree that everybody follows. And the irony of the situation is I've noticed people have been starting to say over the past, 18 hours, don't let these Republicans who are criticizing what happened to Alex Preddy fool you. They're bad. And then it's like, first of all, that doesn't need to be said. It's like, we're not dumb. We're not going to be fooled into, oh, everything must have changed. No, uh, we don't expect that. As a matter of fact, in Arizona, this is kind of unprecedented and alarming. Uh, in Arizona, Border Patrol and ICE shut down and raided 15 to 20 bars all at the same time. Extremely coordinated operation. I don't think we've seen something like that in a city yet where they have been deployed, where they hit 15 to 20 locations coordinated at the same time, locked everybody who was inside. If you were inside, you were locked inside with agents who said, basically, we have a warrant for who knows. They're holding up a piece of paper. We haven't seen the piece of paper, but they're holding up pieces of paper saying, under this warrant, nobody's going anywhere. So if you were a paying customer under the piece of paper that they said, said certain things, you were stuck. And they were there for, this wasn't like a 15-minute quick check and then out. These places were locked down for several hours, and people were definitely taken away. So we are apparently anticipating some kind of surge here because the governor and the attorney general had a press conference yesterday. I don't know. The days are so long, but we made it to Wednesday. We did. We made it to Wednesday. Congratulations. But they had a press conference outlining, what they're doing to prepare for an anticipated surge. And I'm just like, the good and the bad thing is that everybody learns from the previous or, ongoing elsewhere operation. Everybody does. The federal government learns. Other states that are watching and anticipating that it may happen to them are learning. Mutual aid and resistance organizers are learning. But everybody learns how to sharpen their tactics. And everybody adjusts their tactics and improves their tactics. And that's good and bad. Yeah, right. I'm gonna try and de-escalate. And now he's on social media saying the mayor of Minneapolis is playing with fire. That doesn't sound like a de-escalation. De-escalation, Dawn. Dawn the de-escalator? In what world? Not this one. Not anywhere on the planet. Period. There's no molecule of his existence that is really truly capable of de-escalating a situation, just straight up de-escalating a situation. That is a foreign language to him. Mr. Zippies, I'm calling for the peace. My husband wants the peace. Biscuit head ass broad. He's way too moody. I agree. He's way too moody. And at this point, yeah, I definitely believe that he's got dementia. At this point, yeah, I believe he's had a stroke. Um I don't think he can track rapidly changing events, you know? Like, when he came out last night, well, later in the day and said, Alex Preddy shouldn't have had a gun. He shouldn't have had a gun. I don't like that he had a gun. I was like, I know people in his staff are just banging their heads against the wall because, sir, remember remember our meeting 3 hours ago? Remember when we went over the messaging? Remember when you said this was tragic and sad? And he was not an assassin or remember that? That's our messaging. He got up. Remember when KKK Caroline stood at the podium and said, remember when the NRA said, remember all this, sir, that is not the messaging. I said, I know people were just banging their heads against the wall, just like, fuck, fuck, off the rails it goes. It's like when he called Greenland Iceland and KKK Caroline went on X and was like, Greenland is a place of ice. It is common to refer to it as the land of ice. Like, well, first of all, that's not what he said. He didn't say the land of ice. He said Iceland, which is a different place. He said it several times. Yeah, dementia Donnie, boy. Dementia Donnie. Got the codes to the nuclear weapons. We're just living on a razor's edge every goddamn day because Republicans are hoes. The aspirin thing is what clinched it for me because, I've said many and many a time, I don't like it when medical professionals who haven't examined somebody go on social media or television and pontificate on, somebody's health. That doesn't mean that I haven't heard all of the theories, right? And what really cinched it for me was when he came out and said how much aspirin he is taking. That man has a partial blocked blood vessel in his head. That is the only reason. There is no other medically stated reason why you take that specific dosage. It's different from what they would recommend for a partial block anywhere else. It's specific to the brain. I was like, he's had a stroke. He's in danger of another stroke. So when I say that, I was just like, because coincidentally, I've been saying for some time, just die. Just die. Preferably if you could stroke out on camera where everybody could see it so it's unequivocal what happened. Not because I like seeing death and destruction, but because it needs to be witnessed while we talking about believe with your own eyes, right? I've been saying for some time, preferably if you could stroke out on camera. And lo and behold, all this time, this man in danger of stroking out. He probably doesn't want to have the procedure if it's accessible, safely accessible. Probably doesn't want to have the procedure because that would take him out. You're unconscious for an extended period of time. They're gonna sign powers over to somebody else. We done seen the West Wing. We already know. He said, I'm not doing that. What else can you do? They said, well, you can take 6,000. It's not 6,000. It's like 300. It's a very specific number that made medical professionals all over the internet go, okay. We're not supposed to say this man done had a stroke, but flip to the page in where the recommended dosage for something that done happened up here and is ongoing is the exact same amount as what the president just told everybody he takes every single day. I was like, you got me. Sold. I'm there. I believe it. It depends on where it is. I don't, eh, I'm not even about to pretend, okay? To speak on that because I can't. But I would imagine it depends on where it is, right? But yes, there's going to be an incision site, even if it's one of those like minimally, they're literally just like drilling in. Still, they had to shave something off of there or unglue it or whatever. Yeah, you're going to have a bandage, not your little ear decoration, but a real one. He's not doing that. He's not doing that. But everything I've been even this even this photo of him, if you have had elderly people in your life and you watched them age, you know the signs often just from their face that they are just mathematically, but just are entering or in the last chapter of their life. And you can look at Donald Trump's face from his first term to this term. The mouth, the nose, the starting to lose the weight out of his face is starting to hollow and thin out. That is a telltale sign that you are in the last chapter of your life. You don't even need to have necessarily a condition besides being old. Now, the last chapter of your life could go for 20 years. But there's telltale signs to the start of it, and I do believe he's firmly in that. Let nature take its course, you know? Feels like feels like the right thing to do, you know? All he said about Joe Biden is showing in him. He's a projector. You can't be over 60 and not hear you can't be over 40 and not hear certain things from your doctor just because you're over 40. You can't be over 45 and not hear certain things from your doctor just because you're over 45. You can't be 50 and up and not hear certain things from your doctor. 60, 70. I think the way they frame it to him is typically men your age will start to begin experiencing, and Donald's like, interesting. Uh-huh. All the while, it's applicable to him because you just are that age. You just are. That's just life. So, but yes, we started yesterday talking about the fact that the United States of America, I mean, I feel like it's all of us. I feel like it's all of us. Is being sued. Hold on a sec. Huh, interesting. Speaking of, this case was assigned to a magistrate judge who just recused. So it will be reassigned. I hereby recuse myself from consideration of the above captioned case, period. So that judge has a real or perceived conflict of interest and has immediately recused. So it will be reassigned. That literally just came through on my email. So we were getting ready to talk about this. It could be anything. It could be real or perceived, right? That's key language. Real or perceived. It could be that he was in the Navy. And he's like, you know what? It could be that his partner or spouse, and we don't know what it is, okay? We don't know what it is, and we're probably never gonna know. And these things are often more routine than they are scandalous, and often judges will invoke it um out of an abundance of caution for any perceived anything. So we'll just leave it at that, you know? So I'm gonna go back over the information that I started with yesterday to talk about why we're even digging into this case. Number one, because I think that the United States of America should experience accountability for the harms that it does around the world, just as a baseline, right? Number two, fuck Pete Hegseth. Okay. Um, Number three, a looter brought this to my attention, and when I looked at the first page of the lawsuit, which is a federal lawsuit, it had language on there that I hadn't seen before, and I said, "Oh, we're gonna learn. We're gonna learn." So I'm gonna start. Again, I know I did this yesterday because we started to get into this document, but there may be people who are here now who weren't here then. And honestly, I dumped it all out of my brain. Okay, we got interrupted. I had to go deal with the thing, and at that point, I dumped it all out of my brain, baby. So if this is repetitive to you, bear with me and everybody else, and then I'll put the document up on screen. This lawsuit is filed in Admiralty because the alleged wrongful conduct is a killing that occurred on the high seas, meaning waters more than 3 nautical miles from the United States shoreline. Admiralty law is a specialized body of federal law that governs events occurring at sea, and Congress has expressly given federal courts original jurisdiction over these kinds of maritime claims. By pleading the case this way, the plaintiffs are anchoring the court's power to hear the case in the physical location of the deaths, not in the nationality of the victims or the political context of the strike. The core statute doing the heavy lifting here is the Death on the High Seas Act, which explicitly authorizes a civil action in admiralty when a death is caused by a wrongful act occurring on the high seas. The plaintiffs argue that homicide qualifies as a wrongful act under the statute, and courts have agreed with that interpretation for decades. Admiralty is not a stylistic, you know, dramatic flair here. It's the jurisdictional hook that allows families of foreign nationals to sue for wrongful death when the killing happens at sea and no state wrongful death statute could possibly apply. Filing in admiralty also matters because it helps get around sovereign immunity. Normally, you cannot sue the United States unless Congress has clearly said you can. The complaint relies on the suits in Admiralty Act, which waives which waives sovereign immunity for maritime claims that could have been brought against a private party under similar circumstances. So that means the plaintiffs are saying that if a private vessel or actor had launched a missile and killed civilians at sea, Admiralty law would allow a wrongful death suit. So the United States should not be immune simply because it was the one that fired the weapon. And don't ask me what I think their odds are, because baby, I don't have the foggiest idea. Dunno, dunno. But I think it's interesting. I think it sounds like, just from the initial research that I did to try and figure out, okay, what does this mean? Um, that they're taking the best approach that they, you know, think is going to work. So let's get back into it. Yeah, it really was. And thank y'all for your grace, because when you got to go handle business, you got to go handle business. So this is a strike on an alleged drug boat off of the coast of Venezuela, on or about October 14 of last year. The United States government authorized and launched a missile strike against a boat carrying 6 people traveling from Venezuela to Trinidad. The strike killed all 6, including Chad Joseph and Rishi Samaru, 2 Trinidadian nationals who had been fishing in waters off the Venezuelan coast and working on farms in Venezuela, and who were returning to their homes in La Cuevas in nearby Trinidad and Tobago. I'm not sure. Tobago? I'm going with Tobago. The October 14 attack was part of an unprecedented and manifestly unlawful U.S. military campaign of lethal strikes against small boats in the Caribbean and Eastern Pacific Ocean. Since this military campaign began on September 2, the United States has launched 36 armed attacks against boats in international waters, killing an estimated 125 people. Tobago. Okay. All right. The United States has not conducted these strikes pursuant to any congressional authorization. Instead, the government has acted unilaterally, and Trump administration officials, including President Donald J. Trump and Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, have publicized videos of the boat strikes, boasting about and celebrating their role in killing defenseless people. These premeditated and intentional killings lack any plausible legal justification. Thus, they were simply murders, ordered by individuals at the highest levels of government and obeyed by military officers in the chain of command. In response to the strikes, members of Congress, former U.S. government officials from across the political spectrum, former military leaders and personnel, experts on laws of war, and dozens of foreign governments, including some of the United States' closest allies, have condemned the U.S. military strikes as illegal. Reports indicate that inside the Department of Defense, many officers have questioned the legality of the strikes, and that some have even sought private counsel out of concern of potential criminal liability. Confronted with widespread denunciations, the government has made threadbare claims that the lethal boat strikes are lawful under laws of war. It has pointed to a still secret Office of Legal Counsel memo that reportedly determined that the United States is engaged in a non-international armed conflict against scores of unspecified drug cartels in Latin America. Whatever the secret memo states, it cannot render the patently illegal killings lawful. First, under the plain terms of the law of war, also known as international humanitarian law, There is no actual armed conflict that could justify the use of lethal military force against the boats, nor was there one on October 14 when Mr. Joseph and Mr. Samaru were killed. As a result, the United States campaign of killing violates international laws prohibiting extrajudicial killings and federal law prohibiting murder. The question is, why didn't they stop and search? We have obviously better boats, faster boats. You could have stopped, searched, detained. Could have done that. But Donald and Pete want to drop bombs somewhere. They want to show military might. And this is just like appetizers for them. They're doing it because they can. They're doing it because they think nobody is going to do anything about it, certainly not the Republicans. Nobody is going to check them. Nobody cares about these people. They don't mean anything. They're not bombing fishing boats off the coast of France. Does France have a coast? You know what I mean? You know what I mean? Um, right? This is just appetizers for them. For something like dropping bombs on Iran, which poses an actual threat to our lives. There is no retaliatory measure that is going to harm us. They're just jalapeno poppers while they prepare for the main course that makes them feel strong and mighty and powerful. Yeah, it was publicly reported at the time. There was at least one very high up resignation. Okay, I thought so. It's early in the morning. It's early in the morning. That's my defense. Okay, that's my defense. It's early. I mean, and then there's that. So thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, so second, even if there were a real armed conflict that could trigger the application of international humanitarian law, these airstrikes would still be illegal under that established body of law. Indeed, given that top U.S. officials ordered the direct, intentional, and unjustified killings of civilians, their actions amount to grave breaches of the 1994 Geneva Conventions, and as such, war crimes punishable under federal and international law. Also, trying to storm into people's consulates and embassies, that's also Geneva Convention violations. Just wanted to point that out. Um, So, as such, these are war crimes punishable under federal and international law. The United States unlawful killing of persons at sea, including Mr. Joseph and Mr. Samaru, constitute wrongful deaths and extrajudicial killings as recognized by two federal statutes that entitle their survivors to compensation and redress: the Death on the High Seas Act and the Alien Tort Statute. I would imagine that they very intentionally decided not to go the international court route with this case, since they're arguing that they have a federal private right of action. I'm sure they decided, we're going to try this first. This is a 23-page filing. And that to me says a lot. Okay. This is what they think is their best at bat when it comes to jurisdiction and just strategy. But this isn't, there's not 100 attachments to this filing. So they're being conservative in how much time they put into the story of this case and the evidence of what happened because they know that their first and ultimate battle is going to be fighting for this case to get heard in federal court in the United States of America. That's where they're going to initially be putting all of their energy because the federal government is going to say there actually is no jurisdiction and this case cannot be brought here. And they're going to try and get it dismissed. Period. If they lose, they're going to appeal. If they lose that appeal, they're going to appeal. That puts them at the Supreme Court, right? So this is going to be just this as the starting salvo. This is going to be a years-long fight just to get this case heard in federal court in the United States of America. They may at some time take a secondary step at the international court for hope in the future, like a decade from now. But the United States of America doesn't recognize the international court. So they know that there's no point in putting a lot of effort into that right now. That's what I'm thinking for funsies in my head. So, Death on the High Seas Act and the Alien Tort Statute. These wanton, willful, and outrageous killings also constitute torts under general admiralty and maritime law. This body of law makes the United States liable to the survivors' families. Under death on the high seas, when the death of an individual is caused by wrongful act, neglect, or default occurring on the high seas beyond 3 nautical miles from the shore of the United States, the personal representative of the decedent may bring a civil action in admiralty against the person or vessel responsible. Courts have long held that homicide is a wrongful act within the meaning of death on the high seas. The torts piece enacted in 1789 permits non-citizens to bring suit in U.S. court for violations of the law of nations or a treaty of the United States. Under the ATS, federal courts are authorized to adjudicate violations of law of nations norms, also known as customary international law, that are clearly defined and widely accepted. The prohibition on extrajudicial killing, the arbitrary or unlawful deprivation of the right to life, is a norm codified in every major human rights treaty and has reached the status of a non-derogable norm that binds all states in peacetime and war. Indeed, U.S. courts have recognized a customary international law norm prohibiting past state-sponsored extrajudicial killings as the basis of any torts claim. And since the founding era, federal courts sitting in Admiralty have adjudicated torts committed on the high seas in violation of international law pursuant to the torts statute. Citing a case from 1795 is crazy. In this lawsuit, Mr. Joseph's mother and Mr. Samaru's sister bring claims under DOSHA, the torts, and general admiralty and maritime law, seeking compensation for the killing of Mr. Joseph and Mr. Samaru for the benefit of their beneficiaries. Through this suit, Miss Burnley and Miss Coruscant also demand accountability for U.S. officials' brazen acts taken in wanton disregard of the most elementary principles of law and humanity that took away their loved ones forever. Jurisdiction. which largely we just covered a lot of, but they have to address it. So they're readdressing the laws that they believe apply. Parties. Lenore Burnley is a citizen of Trinidad and Tobago and the mother of Chad Joseph, a Trinidadian national who the United States extrajudicially killed via a missile strike on or about October 14, 2025. Mr. Joseph's family has decided that Ms. Burnley will represent Mr. Joseph's estate and has retained local counsel in Trinidad for the purpose of effectuating Ms. Burnley's appointment as the estate's personal representative. Plaintiff Sally Kaur Singh is a citizen of Trinidad and Tobago and the sister of Rishi Samaru, a Trinidadian national who the United States extrajudicially killed on or about October 14. Mr. Samaru's family has decided that Ms. Kaur Singh will represent Mr. Samaru's estate and has retained local counsel in Trinidad for the purposes of effectuating Ms. Kaur Singh's appointment as the estate's personal representative. Defendant United States of America is responsible for all of the acts and omissions of its agents, officers, and personnel described herein. Their conduct is attributable to defendant because United States agents, officers, and personnel, including and under the command and control of President Donald J. Trump and Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, acting in their official capacities, authorized and or carried out the killings of Mr. Joseph and Mr. Samaru on the high seas. On or about October 14, Trump announced on his social media platform that he had ordered a lethal kinetic strike on a boat traveling in international waters just off the coast of Venezuela, killing 6 men. The announcement included a 33-second video of the strike. The video begins by showing a small, entirely stationary boat in low light conditions. For several seconds, the boat does not move or emit any light. A munition can then be seen rapidly falling toward the boat. The munition then strikes the boat, which is immediately consumed by flames. For the remainder of the video, the viewer can no longer make out the contours of the boat. It is legible only as a conflagration. According to Trinidad and Tobago Foreign Affairs Minister Sean Sobers, Trinidadian authorities have obtained the coordinates of this strike and other strikes carried out by the U.S. military in the Caribbean Sea that verify that the strikes occurred outside of Trinidad and Tobago's territorial waters. Upon information and belief, Mr. Joseph and Mr. Samaru were on board the boat depicted in this video at the time the strike was carried out. Before the United States killed him, Mr. Joseph was a 26-year-old resident of Las Cuevas, Trinidad, where he lived with his common-law wife and their 3 minor children, for whom Mr. Joseph provided support, parental guidance, and nurture. Like many residents of Las Cuevas, a small fishing community located approximately 20 nautical miles from Venezuela, Mr. Joseph often traveled between Las Cuevas and Venezuela for fishing and farm work in Venezuela. During these trips, Mr. Joseph would often stay in Venezuela for weeks and occasionally months at a time. Every day while in Venezuela, Mr. Joseph would call his wife and children, sometimes multiple times a day. Mr. Joseph would also regularly call his mother, Miss Burnley, and would often have group WhatsApp calls with her and his wife. In April 2025, Mr. Joseph traveled from Las Cuevas to Venezuela for fishing and farm work. In June or July, Mr. Joseph told his wife that he planned to return to Las Cuevas by boat. His plan was thwarted, however, when a boat Mr. Joseph found to transport him home encountered engine trouble and had to turn back. For the next several weeks, Mr. Joseph tried to find another boat that could take him back to Las Cuevas. During this time, as usual, Mr. Joseph and his wife spoke daily. One conversation remains a particularly vivid and haunting memory for his wife. A call on September 2, or shortly thereafter, when media reports first appeared online about the U.S. military blowing up a boat that had left Venezuela with 11 people aboard. Mr. Joseph called his wife and Miss Burnley to assure them that he was not aboard that vessel and that he would be returning to Trinidad as soon as he could find a ride. Over the next several weeks, Mr. Joseph continued his search for a boat ride home. As reports of the U.S. military's strikes against boats in the Caribbean Sea dominated the news in the region, Mr. Joseph became increasingly fearful of making the return trip, but he was determined to return to his wife and their children as soon as possible. On October 12, Mr. Joseph called his wife to tell her that he had found a boat that was traveling to Las Cuevas and that he would be home in a couple of days. That call was the last time his wife or anyone else in his family heard from Mr. Joseph. On October 14, Miss Burnley saw media reports that the U.S. military had blown up a boat just off the coast of Venezuela and called Mr. Joseph's wife about them. They immediately feared that Mr. Joseph was aboard this boat, as the timing of the strike directly coincided with Mr. Joseph's journey by boat from Venezuela to Las Cuevas, and, upon information and belief, occurred in waters that Mr. Joseph traversed on that journey. Miss Burnley and Mr. Joseph's wife repeatedly called Mr. Joseph's cell phone, but the line was dead. The line remains dead to this day. As no one has heard from Mr. Joseph since October 12th, his family has concluded that Mr. Joseph was a passenger on board the boat that the United States destroyed on or about October 14. They don't have a body. I thought about this last night when I was trying to fall asleep. So I haven't read this whole document, and I hadn't thought about these strikes to that degree of specificity, but I thought about this last night. I thought about what happened after the missiles dropped. Yep. I got a 25-year-old. He was a baby. Miss Burnley attempted to file a missing persons report about Mr. Joseph's disappearance in Trinidad, where he was born and where she still lives. They told her that the report should be filed in Las Cuevas because that was the last place where he had been seen alive. They filed that report, has heard nothing since doing so. They also arranged for a lawyer to file a Freedom of Information Act request with the Trinidadian government seeking information on or about the strike, to which to date they have received no response. They held a memorial on October 22, where he lived, and then they held a second memorial in his birth village. Before the United States killed him, Mr. Samaru was a 41-year-old resident of Las Cuevas, Trinidad. He was born in Bim Bim Trace, El Socorro, Trinidad, where his elderly father, 8 younger siblings, including Miss Cora Singh, and 2 of his 3 sons still reside. His elderly mother, who is separated from his father, lives nearby in San Juan. Until 2009, Mr. Samaru lived in El Socorro and worked in construction. He was the main breadwinner for his family then, supporting his parents, 2 of his sons, and his brothers and sisters. From 2009 until late 2024, Mr. Samaru was imprisoned for his participation in a homicide. Following his early release on parole, Mr. Samaru moved to Las Cuevas, where he found work in construction and as a fisherman. While living there, Mr. Samaru was in regular contact with his family in El Socorro, calling at least one family member daily. He also financially supported his parents and 2 of his sons. In August 2025, Mr. Samaru called his sister, Miss Cora Singh, to let her know that he was in Venezuela living and working on a farm there. While in Venezuela, Mr. Samaru was in regular contact with Miss Cora Singh and the rest of his family. He called at least one of them at least once a day, and sometimes more, using the WhatsApp video chat function. In their frequent communications, Mr. Samaru shared videos of his work on the farm, where he cared for cows and goats and made cheese. During excuse me. During one of Mr. Samaru's video chats with Miss Cora Singh, Mr. Samaru briefly introduced Mr. Joseph. Mr. Samaru told Miss Cora Singh that Mr. Joseph was a friend of his from Las Cuevas. He said that he and Mr. Joseph fished together and that they were then working on the same farm. I didn't even put that together. Reading the introductory pages, I didn't even put that together. They knew each other. On October 12, Mr. Samaru called Miss Cora Singh from Venezuela to let her know that he was about to catch a ride on a boat headed for Las Cuevas. Mr. Samaru's mother had fallen ill, and Mr. Samaru wanted to come back to help take care of her. Mr. Samaru also sent Miss Cora Singh a photograph of himself wearing a life jacket. He said that he would see Miss Cora Singh in a few days. That call was the last time Miss Cora Singh or anyone else in his family heard from Mr. Samaru. On or soon after October 14, Ms. Cora Singh read social media posts and news reports that the U.S. military had blown up a boat traveling off the coast of Venezuela with 6 men on board, including 2 Trinidadian nationals. Ms. Cora Singh feared that Mr. Samaru was aboard this boat, as the timing of the strike directly coincided with Mr. Samaru's journey by boat from Venezuela to Las Cuevas, and upon information and belief occurred in waters that Mr. Samaru traversed on that journey. She called him multiple times. The line is dead. It remains dead to this day. They filed a missing persons report, a Freedom of Information Act request. They have received no responses. They held a memorial service October 24, 2 days before my birthday. Mr. Joseph and Mr. Samaru were 2 of at least 125 victims of the United States' 36 lethal military strikes against people on boats since September 2. The United States has publicly defended the boat strikes, including the October 14 strike, as lawful. Trump, Hegseth, and other government officials have asserted, sometimes with reference to an OLC legal memo they have continued to keep secret, that these strikes are part of a non-international armed conflict supposedly involving the United States and unspecified drug cartels. Top administration officials have further claimed that the boats they assert are carrying drugs, as well as the people on board, are thus legitimate military targets in this so-called armed conflict, according to news reports. The secret OLC memo concludes that by allegedly trafficking drugs, the boats and civilians in them may be lawfully targeted, regardless of whether they pose any actual military threat to the United States or whether there are means short of lethal force that could reasonably be employed to neutralize any threat they supposedly pose. The memo is the subject of Freedom of Information Act litigation in the Southern District of New York. Note to self, I need to look up and follow that docket. The government has not publicly identified all of the drug cartels with which it claims to be at war, and with respect to nearly all of its boat strikes, including the one on October 14, it has not identified any cartel it was purportedly targeting, nor has the government made public any evidence at all to support its assertions that the boats it has blown up and the people it has killed were members of or even affiliated with drug cartels. Nor has the government provided any public evidence that targeted boats were, in fact, carrying drugs drugs or that the occupants were trafficking them, let alone that any such drugs were destined for the United States. Mr. Joseph and Mr. Samaru were not members of or affiliated with drug cartels. The Trinidadian government has publicly stated that the government has no information linking Joseph or Samaru to illegal activities and that it had no information of the victims of U.S. strikes being in possession of illegal drugs, guns, or small arms. The government's own admissions demonstrate that its claims about drug trafficking are dubious, if not fabricated. Secretary of State Marco Rubio publicly stated that drugs allegedly on board the boats were not even destined for the United States but for Europe. And the U.S. Coast Guard recently acknowledged that in many cases, boats the government interdicts and searches under suspicion of drug trafficking off the coast of Venezuela are ultimately found to have no illicit contraband aboard. In fact, the White House Chief of Staff admitted in an interview published on December 16, that interview, the one with the photos, that interview, was at Vanity Fair where we saw KKK Caroline's Botox injections. That's the interview that he's talking about, I believe. Yeah, December 16, because he said chief of staff, and that's, what's her name? Sally Shelley, the woman who looks like a cross between Mrs. Doubtfire and what's her name from Harry Potter? Yeah. Published on December 16, 2025, that the United States' goal in targeting boats had nothing to do with drugs at all, but that the president planned to keep blowing boats up until President Nicolas Maduro of Venezuela resigned. Since that statement, on January 3, 2026, the United States undertook a military operation in Venezuela, abducted President Maduro and his wife, and reportedly killed scores of people. Since that raid, the government has engaged in one boat strike on January 23. Caroline Lovett. She spells it with a K. That's why we call her KKK Caroline. Caroline Lovett is the White House spokesperson. The blonde that's always at the podium talking out the side of her neck. Yeah, that's her. Regardless of any secret evidence the government claims to have to support its unprecedented legal theory, as a matter of plain fact and settled law, there is no bona fide armed conflict between the United States and any purported drug cartels, nor was there one when the United States killed Mr. Joseph and Mr. Samaru, which could justify the use of military force. Under international human rights law, there are two types of armed conflicts: international armed conflicts and non-international armed conflicts. An international armed conflict is determined under Common Article 2 of the 1949 Geneva Conventions and customary international law, exists only when there are armed hostiles between two or more states. The government has not claimed that it is involved in an international armed conflict that justifies its recent campaign of boat strikes, nor has it claimed that the boats it has targeted are military vessels controlled by another state. A non-international armed conflict, as defined under Common Article 3 of the Geneva Conventions and customary international law, exists between a state and a non-state entity only where there is protracted armed violence, which is military in character, between a state and an organized armed group. The government has claimed that the United States is engaged in such a non-international armed conflict with drug cartels, but it is not, because the established conditions for such a conflict are not remotely met. Almost every law of war expert agrees. With respect to the relevant criteria, first, there is no actual protracted armed violence of the kind cognizable under IHL occurring between the United States and any drug cartel. No drug cartel has confronted the United States using military means, such as tanks and other military equipment, in sustained armed clashes. And drug cartels do not engage in armed violence merely by trafficking drugs. Organized crime, even when it involves violent acts, does not constitute armed violence against a state. Organized crime is just that, a crime that, in the United States, is cognizable and punishable by criminal law alone, subject to constitutional constraints, including due process of law. Second, the United States is not. This is why Congress's approval of acts of war is important. That's supposed to be the check and balance to the president just dropping bombs everywhere. They're supposed to make sure that things are happening legally within all the layers of all of the applicable laws on the planet, including the Geneva Conventions. Oh my God. The one at the podium with the chipmunk cheeks. And then Kim Tillman says, her cheeks are where she holds the lies. You all are the best. You are the best. I'm going to clip that into a short. I just want you to know. Yeah, the cheeks are where she holds the lies. I see no inaccuracies with this. I see no inaccuracies. It's okay. It's all right. I mean, that was a real good one. I still feel bad for chipmunks, though. Why are we always comparing chipmunks to some dastardly, dirty, stanky mofos? Dang. Oh, baby, she a whole horcrux for the president, okay? She a whole horcrux for the president. I hope that demon baby she pregnant with splits her in half. Like Bella. Like Bella in the glitter vampire movie, except for with no survival. So fucking what? Chipmunks gotta eat too. The fuck? Chipmunks wrapped in bare feeders. You fucking fed? Look at you. Look at you all fed it out. God damn. Narc. Why are you narking on the chipmunks? Damn. Shoot. They deserve it more. Matter of fact, the whole survival course they got to go through to get to the food, they deserve it more. I'm just saying. Okay. Back to American Murder. Chipmunk cheeks are where she hides the lies. Oh my God. We gonna come back to cracking on them in a minute. We're on page 17 of 23. Y'all pull it the fuck together. Shit. Okay. The United States is not engaged in hostilities against any drug cartel that constitutes an organized armed group under IHL. A non-state entity is an organized armed group only when it can operate akin to regular armed forces, that is, with a command structure that imposes discipline and utilizes military tactics in a unified manner. No drug cartel that exhibits these uh, indicators of organization is engaged in military style, protracted armed violence against the United States. Because these boat strikes did not occur in an armed conflict, the laws of war do not apply. Instead, the rules under international human rights law and federal law regulate the government's strikes. And those rules protect, well, also the I would argue, I'm not a lawyer, but I would argue that how can the United States hide behind laws of war if Congress did not declare war? It's a rhetorical question. But anyway, the rules under international human rights law and federal law regulate the government's strikes, and those rules protect the right to life and prohibit extrajudicial killing. Thus, under the correct legal framework, the government is barred from using lethal force unless, at the time it is applied, lethal force is a necessary last resort to protect against a concrete, specific, and imminent threat of death or serious physical injury. Not even the government has claimed that its strikes could meet this standard. As a result, the strikes are illegal. Moreover, even if the sorry, the heater is drying out my throat, but it's cold. Moreover, even if the strikes had somehow been undertaken within an actual armed conflict, they would still be illegal. In an armed conflict, the laws of war constrain the indiscriminate and direct use of force against civilians. Thus, under IHL, if a person is not a member of an opposing state's armed forces or a member of a non state organized armed group who is directly participating in hostilities, a state is prohibited from using lethal force against them. Similarly, within an armed conflict, a state may target an object, such as a boat, only one, where doing so makes an effective contribution to military action, two, where the object's destruction, capture, or neutralization, in the circumstances ruling at the time, offers a definite military advantage, and three, where a strike's military advantage will be proportional to or excessive of its effects, including collateral damage to human life. Thus, even assuming there was an actual armed conflict, which there was not, no conditions existed to justify the government's lethal strikes against civilians or civilian vessels, including the strike that killed Mr. Joseph and Mr. Samaru. As a result, even in the context of an armed conflict, the killings of Mr. Joseph and Mr. Samaru would constitute a grave breach of the 1949 Geneva Conventions and thus a war crime, making its perpetrators punishable under federal and international law. Put another way, the United States killing of people aboard boats in the Caribbean throughout missile strikes are wrongful and violate international law, regardless of which international law, regardless of which international legal regime applies. First, because there is, in fact, no non international armed conflict with the drug cartels purportedly targeted in the strikes, and no evidence that the boats targeted are associated with cartels, the killings violate the bedrock prohibition against extrajudicial killing and are simply murders on the high seas. And second, even if there were a non international armed conflict between the United States and drug cartels, and even if there were evidence that the boats targeted were associated with the cartels, the strikes would constitute war crimes under the laws of war and federal law. The killings of these men were unlawful. Upon information and belief, the United States agents, officers, and personnel authorized and directed the strike that killed Mr. Joseph and Mr. Samaru, even though, at the time the strike was carried out, neither were engaged in activities that presented a concrete, specific, and imminent threat of death or serious physical injury to the United States or anyone at all, and means other than lethal force could have reasonably been employed to neutralize any lesser threat they or the boat they were on might have posed. Moreover, the killing of Mr. Joseph and Mr. Samaru were unlawful even if carried out in the context of an armed conflict because, upon information and belief, the United States agents, officers, and personnel authorized and directed the strike, even though Mr. Joseph and Mr. Samaru were not directly participating in hostilities against the United States at the time of the strike, nor were they members of an organized armed group engaged in an armed conflict with the United States, nor was the boat they were aboard a lawful military target. So their claims for relief are wrongful death, and they basically reassert everything that they just said, but addressing it to the laws that govern a lawful death determination. Go through the fact that Mr. Joseph is survived by various dependents, and they are harmed due to his unlawful killing. Mr. Samaru, the same, has various dependents, and they are harmed by his extrajudicial killing. Second claim for relief, extrajudicial killings. So they reassert, but specific to the statute in addressing what constitutes an extrajudicial killing. The killings violated customary international law as reflected in Common Article 3 of the Geneva Conventions and the War Crimes Act of the United States, because they constitute an intentional killing of civilians who were not members of an organized armed group engaged in an armed conflict. So again, they're restating pecuniary compensatory, sorry, legal words. Pecuniary, compensatory, and punitive damages in an amount to be determined at trial, and such other relief as the court deems just and proper. They're represented by the ACLU and the Center for Constitutional Rights. Okay, I didn't realize that. That gives me, that's good to know. That's great. That's fantastic. Good job, ACLU. Good job. I can't remember from public reporting if Navy vessels, or hell, the Coast Guard for that matter, if they approached these boat strikes after the fact, if they gathered anything from them, or did they just sink these boats? Like, are there no bodies anywhere that anybody has recovered? I don't know the answer to that. Um, this is a real fight that they're taking up, which is why I'm glad that they're represented by the ACLU, because there are so many things that the United States government is going to drag them through court on. Number one, can this lawsuit even go forward, right? Can they even sue under the statutes that they say they can sue under? Can they even do that? That's one fight. The other fight is that I could just see, because the United States is a dick. Prove they're dead. The United States could dispute that these men are even dead, or that it hasn't been proven to the standards of US federal law that these men are dead. I could just things to drag it down, drag it out, delay, 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 drain resources from the plaintiffs. Again, very glad that they're represented by the ACLU and the Center for Constitutional Rights. That's great because they're not going anywhere. As opposed to, some private law firm. Um, I think it's great that the ACLU is suing. I think that's fantastic. So the case has already been reassigned. I got that docket update. So things move on. And that was I think that might have been just for the magistrate. I'm not even sure if that was for the main judge, but either way, I don't think that it was a big deal that a judge off top recused, whether it's the federal court judge or the magistrate. In other news, the Department of Homeland Security has confirmed that the agents involved in the shooting of Alex Preddy have been placed on administrative leave. It's really unfortunate that it's been 5 days to get that confirmation, as people have been asking that question. Rand Paul posted about it. We discussed this briefly yesterday. Rand Paul posted about it on social media, demanding that they be placed on leave. So I don't know if they were immediately placed on leave or not, but it has been confirmed that they are. Marco Rubio testified this morning, wide-ranging things said. I'm not even going to get into that right now. I believe the Trump accounts event may have been today, or at least there was some kind of Trump accounts event. Maybe there's another one where MAGA pedo protector Minaj will be speaking. Iran is mocking Donald on social media, so that's interesting. Oh, yeah. It was today. Oh, there she is. Oh, she doesn't look good, guys. Oh my God, I've got a photo. Gird your loins. Let me get a screenshot of Nikki with the president today. I mean, okay, maybe it's not that bad. Maybe I'm not being fair. Maybe it's not that bad. Yeah, maybe I'm gonna let y'all be the judge. Give me a second. Who could forget star-studded? The star-studded event. There's your girl. There she is. That angle is just really bad. That angle is just really, really, really bad. Yeah, that's a bad. The contour on her nose looks crooked. Her nose looks like it's going "Vyoop." Yeah, did you? Yeah, but that's what I was like, God, her face looks really different, but I think it's angles. Just not good, and there are things working against her, right? She's got the part, then she's got the crossover, her head is turned in a funny direction. Contour makeup might be a little off. That's not helping the situation any. Normally, that would be the thing that you point to say a photo is AI, but they're doing this on their own. Normally, you would look at a photo and say, "Oh, this is AI. They fucked up the hands." But no, this is an intentional choice. Yeah. Yes, that too. Yeah, it's just not good, and it's plainly stupid at that. But, the billionaires were there to stroke his ego, and she said that her admiration for the president is not going to change. She's talking to all you barbs out there in denial who are thinking, it's just a momentary lapse in judgment. This is who she is. That's her. Or that's her. That's her. Shit. Orient myself. She had MAGA eyes before any of them. MAGA titties. Buy one, get the second half off. I don't fucking know. The FBI is raiding the Fulton County Elections Office in Georgia. They tried, they didn't. Let me do some looking. I've got a lot of things open at the same time, so just give me a second. Jesus Christ, I don't need your fucking pop-ups. The FBI will not make any comment. The Department of Justice will also not make any comment. Multiple law enforcement vehicles and agents were seen at the county's election hub and operations center in Fairburn, a site that opened in 2023 to centralize and modernize election operations. Fox 5 Atlanta observed agents outside the building as activity unfolded. FBI Atlanta confirmed agents were executing a court-authorized action at the facility's address. Authorities will not say what prompted the operation or what records or materials are being sought. Last year, the Board of Registrations and Elections was accused by the Department of Justice of failing to comply with a subpoena requesting all used and void ballots, stubs of all ballots, signature envelopes, and corresponding envelope digital files from the 2020 general election in Fulton County. It's not clear if that lawsuit and request for information is connected with the search, but it did happen. I believe is happening. There will be leaks. We will find out more throughout the day. But for right now, that's all we know. There's a stay on him and his father being sent out of the country. Yeah, he demanded the same from our state as well. Um, I'm just checking reporting to see if anybody has an early scoop on what the fuck this is, but I don't see anything as of yet. And I need to close some of these tabs. It's getting out of control over here. Okay. Okay. I think that's it. Yeah, if it's not one thing, it's another. The things I am most concerned about are this Iran situation. That's really not good. That's really, really not good. Um, and the Democrats still haven't sued over the Epstein files, so that's not good either. I think they are severely fucking up that entire situation. And every day that passes, my frustrations with them mount. Because you must be fucking kidding me. Stop being a bitch and just do it. He came out recently, last week, he said that there's going to be criminal indictments with regards to the 2020 election soon. So that was a huge red flag for me when I saw him say that last week. Huge red flag. They about to be on that bullshit. And I'm going to be following this very closely because a warrant for what? A judge signed a warrant for what? Yeah, that's hugely troubling. Hugely, hugely troubling. We'll see what happens. All right, y'all. Well, thanks for tapping in with me this morning. I'm glad that we were able to get through um that lawsuit. I'm reminding myself that I need to go look up that other docket for the secret memo that folks are suing over, because that's interesting as well. I'm just glad that people are calling bullshit on this administration, and it's "Who gonna stop me, bro?" attitude. Who gonna stop us? It's just maddening to watch them do whatever they wanna do, especially when it comes to killing people. Just outright dropping appetizer bombs because they want to feel powerful, and death makes them feel strong and powerful. Killing people is the ultimate act of exercising power. And Donald Trump believes that if you don't exercise power, then you're weak. And Hegseth has the exact same mentality as him. You don't try and rename your department to the Department of War if you're not planning on going to war. So I'm glad somebody decided to step up and say, you're killing people and it's illegal. They're in for a very long fight on this one, a very long fight, but it's worth it because murder is devastating under normal circumstances. So, yeah, good for them. Thank you very much for the support. I appreciate you, beautiful. Um, yeah, I will obviously see y'all very soon because the fuckery just keeps fuckerying. So, yeah. But have a good day. If I don't see you again today, have a good day. Take care of yourself. That's pretty much all any of us can do. Okay, beloved? Okay. I'll see you soon. Peace.